Everything that we now believe comes exclusively from the white society. Ask yourself, when in history did the white society ever earn the credibility to exclusively control what black people believe about ourselves? They never have. They've been telling negative lies about us for more than 400 years. When they invaded and enslaved our ancestors, they told a lie that Africans were illiterate and savages, and that therefore their invasion and enslavement of Africans benefited us. When they mutilated the genitals of enslaved black women for gynecology research without anesthesia, they said that black women felt no pain at all. They told that same lie when they castrated enslaved black men. They've always told lies about us. The reason why many black people now blindly believe all of the lies the white society now says about us is not because black people are suffering from collective amnesia, nor is it because black people are too forgiving or too forgetful, as many have short-sightedly said. Those are not the case at all. The true reason why many black people now blindly accepts the white society's lies about us is because black people are not functioning based upon an accurate interpretation of the true history shared between the white society and our racial group. The minds of black people have instead been socialized to blindly trust the white society in spite of a deceitful history of the contrary. Socialized is when the oppressors exploits their monopoly over the contents that are fed into the minds of the oppressed to manipulate the oppressed to think in ways benefiting the oppressors. Socializing of the oppressed is possible because people are like computers. All you have to do is give them certain information every so often, and you can steer an entire generation towards an implied objective. The human mind is like a computer. No matter how efficient it may be, its reliability is only as great as the information being fed into it. If it's possible to control the input into the human mind, then no matter how intelligent people are, it's entirely possible to control what they'll believe. Through the white society's monopoly over the input that is fed into the minds of black people, the information and media images that are fed into our collective minds, they've socialized millions of black people to think and behave in ways that benefits the white society. The oppressed rarely ever learn that they've been socialized. This is the case in regards to black people. Most black people don't know that their minds have been socialized. And then after socializing us to blindly believe the white society's lies, in spite of that deceitful history to the contrary, they now keep us believing the fraudulent worst narratives about ourselves. Because doing so demoralizes us, divides us, creates black self-loathing, and it shifts black collective aggressions away from the white society and redirects it against ourselves. As long as we're kept within this condition, we can then be ruled over forever. The white society writes all black narratives, controls all black mainstream media images. The white society, therefore, literally owns black people's interpretation of our collective state. If you don't think that they're exploiting this fact to manipulate our collective minds to think in ways that benefits themselves, it's because of your socialized mind. The white society has transformed its monopoly over what we believe about ourselves into their greatest weapon used for controlling us. And it's so obvious that it's only by not critically thinking that it cannot be seen. For when critically thinking, it becomes easy to see just how cartoonishly unrealistic it actually is that all information that black people receive about ourselves from the white society are consistently negative and black racially devaluing. Those negative depictions have been carefully designed to adversely influence the opinions, the emotions, attitudes, and behaviors of the Black population. It's a system that utilizes the immense power that shame has upon the human mind to mentally enslave millions of Black people. It's information warfare. Whenever those in power wants to brainwash an entire generation to think and behave as they want them to do so, they always heavily demoralize them. Here's a basic example of how this psychological warfare tactic actually works. Imagine that a crew was out at sea aboard their very own well-functioning blue ship, and that this blue ship was being followed by a red ship. A red ship that was constantly transmitting false, derogatory, demoralizing messages to the blue ship. Such messages saying that the blue ship was lesser, smaller, not seaworthy, therefore slowly sinking. And also messages stating that the blue ship's crew were all incompetent. With time, the crew of the blue ship, after having been bombarded constantly by the onslaught of derogatory messages about themselves, messages that they could neither confirm nor refute, will eventually grow weary and frustrated by the constant ongoing negative messages. Many of the blue ship's crew members will eventually come to accept and internalize the taunting ship's derogatory messages about themselves. It doesn't matter if the information is true or not. Most of the crew will eventually respond to it because they've all been given the same disinformation. The red ships constantly transmitted negative messages now unconsciously influences how the taunted blue ship's crew perceive themselves, subsequently causing them to become distrustful of themselves, doubting of themselves, hating of themselves, and eventually fighting among themselves. Now the crew of the taunting red ship can sit back and observe the effects of the demoralizing lies upon the blue ship's crew. Some of the blue ship's crew, having internalized the negative messages, may become so besieged by the deep feelings of self-contempt and self-hatred that they may even jump into the sea and attempt to swim toward the taunting ship, now believing it to be superior to their own ship, even if their own ship was in fact better. This psychological warfare program influenced, disrupted, and corrupted the collective minds of the blue ship's crew to the benefit of the red ship. The warfare tactic works by affecting the subconscious minds through unrelenting demoralization. Its weapon was the message that it carried and the way the message adversely affected the targeted crew in terms of their behavior. Within a real-world setting, this demoralizing psychological warfare program is precisely what's being done to the Black population through the white-controlled media. The white media's unrelenting negative depictions of Black people that amplifies the negative to the point that it distorts our reality is much more than just biased media reporting. It is actually an insidious Black racially demoralizing divide and rule psychological warfare campaign. Demoralized divide and rule is a method of maintaining control over a targeted population through constant and unrelenting demoralization in order to create self-hatred and division between them. It also attacks the core foundation of what bonds them as a people that can be ruled over forever. This is what the white society is doing to Black people. The system is deployed like a massive media marketing campaign that constantly subjects Black people to receiving only the fraudulent worst narratives about ourselves. Within this system, fraudulent Black racially demoralizing propaganda is being pumped unrelentingly into the unsuspecting minds of the Black population without being challenged or counterbalanced by an equal amount of positive racially affirming information. It conveys the subliminal message that black people are now our own worst enemies and that we therefore need whites to govern over our lives. Moreover, that black people should admire, respect, and trust only whites. This system is extremely effective because when black people are repetitively presented these noted narratives from trusted white media sources, it can be very difficult to resist its implied propaganda programming, especially when the propaganda is being told daily and so unrelentingly. Its weapon is the demoralizing messages that it carries and the way that it adversely affects the black population in terms of our behavior and unity. With time, being unable to refute the constant negative information about ourselves, many black people, like in a story, eventually comes to accept it. The constant taunting of negative propaganda unconsciously influence how many within the black population perceives ourselves, creating division and self-hatred among ourselves. It also shifts the black collective aggressions away from the white society and redirects it towards ourselves. The oppressed will always believe the fraudulent worst about themselves. Frantz Fanon said that. They also control us by making us fear each other through their propaganda campaigns that exaggerates the issue of black on black crime. Black on black crime is oversaturated in the media. The white ruling powers realize that a fearful black population is much more easy to control than a fearless one. Fear is one of the most powerful human emotions, and it can be used as a tool for controlling targeted populations. When one is gripped by fear of a threat, people's rationality shut down, making them easily manipulable by those promising to protect them from the threat. The white societies manipulated many black people to fear our own people and believe that we need white people to protect us from our own people. Fear within the targeted populations are often consequence of narratives created by those in positions of power. Ruling class for many years have understood the power of intentionally invoking fear in their subordinate populations as a means of social control. Social scientists calls it fear psychosis. This psychological warfare propaganda campaign, these provides the white society with a more proficient method for controlling black people. For unlike the past racist systems that black people were easily able to identify and therefore develop counter strategies against, this system is not easily recognized, nor is it easily comprehended by many of its black victims. This psychological warfare program works so well, in fact, that it not only makes black people more compliant with white dominance over our lives, it makes many black people even prefer it. And it makes many black people insist that it's we who are our own worst enemies. While they continue to subjugate us, now we thinking it's our own enemies. It is at the root of the self-hatred and division that's profoundly affecting our community. The supreme art of war is to subjugate a people without them fighting back. White oppressive forces have achieved this through these media propaganda campaigns. They have achieved it. Through them, they've created a psychological prison for the minds of black people. And those black people who don't critically think never notices their mental change. Those of us who tell you the truth are trying to free you from a prison that you don't even know you're trapped within. It's time to wake up to our reality. It's never been a Willie Lynch slave syndrome myth. And no Jesus is going to save it because the Bible is a work of fiction. We must function based on reality to free ourselves.